Hey gang, hey, how's it going? Todd Nauck here. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Welcome to my latest live art stream. So today we're doing part 3 of this Gwenpool illustration. So hopefully you saw the previous 2 live streams where I did the pencil work, then the ink work where we did the inks in the colored microns to give it kind of more of an animated sort of look. And so today, Copic color. Going in with the Copic sketch markers to color up Gwenpool. So let's flip the camera around. Let's get started. I will try to answer as many questions as I can, respond to comments if I can while drawing or while doing the colors here, but a lot of my focus goes into the color art, so I might not be able to respond to as many as I'd like. So hopefully if there's time, I'll be able to do a Q&A at the end of this broadcast, so please do stick around for that. So let's flip the camera around and let's get started. All right, so let me readjust the rig here. And get clamped in. All right. Well, let me get some better lighting going there. All right. Thanks for the kind words, gang. Glad you like what you see. And let me just get some more of my material here together. And just there we go. Okay, thanks so much. So let's see. So we're going to start with the skin tones for Gwenpool. So I'm going to start with some E00. Start to sculpt in the color here. Leaving some of the white of the board open for some highlights on her face. So pretty much we'll be using skin tones here for her face and for her legs. Always like to keep the very tip of the nose, some of the spots on the cheek there open for some highlights, but definitely there on the tip of the nose for sure. Let's go ahead and drop in some color for the legs. Have I used any other Copic skin colors? Oh, it all depends on the person. So I use some lighter shades in the E spectrum for lighter skinned or Caucasian people. And for darker skinned people, I move further into the E spectrum to the E11, 13, 15, depending on how dark the skin needs to be. Like say if I'm coloring an illustration of Storm or Luke Cage or something like that. And everything in between. So it all just depends. So yes, I do use other skin tones, and it all just depends on the character that I'm illustrating. So I'm leaving a good chunk of white here, right down the center of the top of her thighs, where I can come in with some lighter shades and to blend through to kind of keep that highlight going. How did I learn to color from trial and error? Absolutely, absolutely. Back when I started using Copics, there weren't a lot of Copic tutorials online yet. So there wasn't really much I could like watch to learn from. There were like maybe, I think there was a preview of a Adam Hughes Copic marker video, but that was about all I could find that I felt familiar with. So so a lot of it just came from just giving it a try and seeing what worked, what didn't, and just learning more about the markers as I went. Now I'm going to power down to the E000. Pulling from that E00 more into that white, because I don't want a big white highlight running down her leg. So I'm just eating up some of that white that I've left with an even lighter shade. I like to blend with the lighter shade of whatever color family I'm using. instead of using the colorless blender. A lot of people ask me about the colorless blender. I like to use the colorless blender for effects, but I don't like to use it for blending. I like to use the lighter shade of whatever group of colors I'm using. I feel it gives a more seamless blending, and also really allows me to saturate the page with color for ultimate vibrancy. All right, gonna come in with a little E01 right now for a little bit of darker shades. Not necessarily my shadow shades, that's gonna come here up at the end, where I'll come in with the cool grays for some more realistic shadows. But I like to sculpt out a little bit of the color. Sculpt out some of the planes of the face, I should say, with a little bit of a darker color. Just like to layer lots of different colors. Well, I shouldn't say lots. A handful. A handful. Keeping in mind the muscle groupings and shaping, like through the leg, through the thigh. So studying my anatomy has kind of helped me get an idea of how this all kind of fits together. I can utilize that now in my coloring and how I want to sculpt my colors. And that was the E01 right there. So let's go ahead and drop some color on her face and in her lips here. I want to put some pink in her lips using the RV32 right now for a real nice light shade of pink. Let's go for some, where is it? RV95 for the tongue. Or at least the kind of the part that's right under the teeth there. And let's go back to that RV32 for the rest of the tongue there. Let's see, we need some blue for the eyes. So let's start with some B12. And actually I went a little darker up there towards the eyelid, so I'm going to use some B14. Because I want to get a nice gradation from dark blue to light blue. So I felt that B12 was a little too light, so I'm going to go a little darker. And then it goes from the B14 to the B12, and then we're going to use a little B01 to blend the dark to the lightest shade there. So you can see the gradation there. I want to add some rosiness to her cheeks and chin, maybe a little bit to her knees. So I'm going to start with a little R20. So just hitting those spots on her face, right where the cheeks are pulling, maybe a little bit here on the chin, right over here by the eyes, and right here on the nose. Let's put a little bit of rosy on her knees. The joints here, essentially. I'd do this on her elbows too, and maybe a little bit on her shoulder if those were exposed. Let's take this to a R11, a little bit of a lighter shade, to kind of blend that R20 into those shades of E that I had dropped earlier. Push in a little closer so we can see the detail here. Just want to round out these cheeks a little bit more. More across the bridge of the nose. This is the R11 that I'm using. So it really starts to sculpt out the shape of her face with these colors. So what I didn't need to convey in line art, I can convey through color. All right, let's try some of her hair here. Now what's going to be fun with her hair is that she has pink tips that blend up into her blonde hair. So I'm going to start with the blonde part of her hair first. I like to start with my darker color, the E84. Just a few strands here. Not a lot, don't want a lot. Just the parts that are a little bit further away from the light source, which would be from above. So that's just getting things started there for us. Now I'm going to take that to the Y21 next. I'm pulling away in kind of a feathering motion here. The brush tip is great for this. I can just pull from the bangs, pull up and away, and just change the amount of pressure I'm putting on the marker to get a light feather. So it's a little firmer towards where I initially put the marker, and then pulling up and away, and so that so it's very light. So it's like almost like a sweeping motion. To get a nice feathery sort of hair-like texture. And I want to pull this yellow down into where the pink will be a little bit, so that when I blend with the pink, we have a nice transition. And now I want to come in with a really, really light shade of yellow, the Y00, just to bring all this up into the white part of her hair, which would essentially be what I would consider the highlight. Just kind of blend all this together. Now that E84 I had put down initially for her blonde hair has lightened up because of the other colors blending with it. So it gives me just that right shade of shadow in her hair. Blonde hair could be a real challenge to shadow properly, and I find using that E84 is the perfect shadow shade for my blonde hair approach. Now, let's bring those pink tips to her hair. So right now I think I'm going to start with the RV13. It's a very bright shade of pink. I'm just going to start at the bottoms of the tips of the hair to start off with. In that same feathering motion to get that nice flowy strand of hair sort of vibe. Now I want to come in with a lighter shade. We'll use the RV52, I think is what I want to use. Yeah. I'm pulling from the RV13 up into these yellows. So this RV52 I'm using right now is blending with these yellows. The inks are mingling and merging and becoming one nice transition. Still using that feathering technique to blend the previous pink I put down into these blonde shades to get that transition from pink to blonde. So I actually want the yellows and the pinks to merge here. To get exactly what I want. Okay, so I need to double check my Gwenpool reference, make sure I get the colors of her costume correct. Okay. All right, so it's a white stripe down the center and then pink for the outer parts and the shoulders, the gauntlets. I want to make sure I didn't invert that. So I'm going to use the RV13 again. And we're going to tackle the full-on pink parts of her costume first. Always keeping in mind the light source, which is pretty much coming from above. Just a simple light source. Nothing too heavy, nothing too drastic. Let's see, this is used for her gauntlets too, so we'll go ahead and drop that in while we're on this side of her body. Let's come over here to the other side. Still leaving some white on the board, as always, to bring in some lighter shades of pink. Maybe leave some white open for highlights. I know a lot of my focus is going in on the kind of explaining my approach here, but I do plan to do a Q&A at the end of the live stream, so do stick with me, gang. Do stick around for that. Hopefully I'll get a chance to answer your question. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. So I'm keeping in mind the wrinkles. Like I established the wrinkle in the inks there for her sleeve. I'm gonna want to kind of follow the similar approach with the color as well. Also, the anatomy, the musculature, which she's not overly muscular, but there's some level of fitness about Gwenpool. Just want to make sure I don't make her look like She-Hulk level muscles, Wonder Woman level muscles. But she's not just a, you know, she's not rail thin like a rail. You know, because she carries, you know, machine guns around and stuff, so she has to be able to heft a heavy machine gun. Katanas might not be, you know, super light, so she's got to have some level of fitness about her. But just don't want to over accentuate that. So ideally when I'm coloring, I like to use whatever color shade I'm using. I want to use that same shade throughout the entirety of her costume, all the parts that need that shade, before switching to another shade so I don't forget what shades I'm using for which parts. We'll use some of this in her pink goggles, the lenses. Let's see, this is in the G as well. These little parts here on her shin guards. I'll make sure I get those. So I think we've pretty much hit all the parts that need the Y13. Just going to pump up some of the pink at the tips of her hair there, just to give it a little more vibrancy again. So I might pull out some other shades of pink from my collection that I don't often get to use. Yeah. I've got my overflow box of microns, or not microns, Copic markers. So got my RV23 there. What else do I have that I don't often get to use, which might work well here today? Oh, the RV14 would be great. Okay, it just looks like two shades of pink that I can use. 2 extra shades. So, let's come in with, since I was using the RV13, I'm going to come in with a little darker shade, RV14, for some of the darker areas. Some of the parts that would be hidden from the light source. So if I'm considering my light sources from above, then the darker shades would be on the opposite side of wherever the light would be hitting, for the most part. Like right underneath that pouch. Same over here. This bottom side of the gauntlets. I don't want to use a lot of that, just a little bit. So let's see. I'm coming in with the RV23 as my lighter shade to kind of blend these shades of pink together and into the white a bit more. Still want to leave a little, still leave a chunk of that white open for the highlight. Kind of give her a shiny look to her costume. So I'm not going to use up all the white. I'm going to leave just a sliver there. Just gives the eye something to play with for the viewer. Thanks for the kind words, gang. Glad y'all like what you see. Be sure to leave a thumbs up on this broadcast if you like what you see. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on my future art broadcasts. All right, so I think we've just about got all the pinks for her costume down. So I'm just leaving a little bit of white right there at the top of the G belt buckle there as my as a highlight. All right, so let's see. Now we need to do let's do the white parts of her costume, but the white parts will be rendered in a shade of light pink. Very, very light pink. So we're going to use the RV52 here for that. So it's kind of like almost our shadow color. I'll still come in with some cool grays later on, but the white is kind of like her white is like a pink-based white, for lack of a better term. Maybe the white is reflecting the pinks of her uniform, more so than anything else. So again, I'm sculpting the shapes, like across her chest here, down the side of her arm, her fingers. Just considering the shapes. And how do I reflect those shapes with the color? How do I translate them? Like here, her abdomen. This part would have some semblance of light hitting it, and then as it bends, it's moving away from the light. So leaving a lot of white open in this because it's mostly a white part of her costume. I'm just using some color here to help shadow and shape the aspects or form of her body. Leaving a little bit of white here on this side as a kind of like a sense of a reflected light. There on the knuckles, just boom, boom, boom. I've created the sense of the fingers bending. As simple as that. Didn't convey it so much in lines for these fingers here. Maybe here because of the angle, but here not as much, letting color do that. A little more pink up there in the wrinkles. Sometimes I like to go back over the color I've put down for a second layer just to punch up the vibrancy, a little more saturation. Oh yeah, then we have her boots and shin guards. So her legs are kind of fading out into the mists down here, for lack of a better term. There we go, that's all we need to do for that. So, next up, we have all of her belts and straps. Let's do those next. So we're going to use some shades of brown here. Let's start with an E55. E55. Considering the roundedness I've established with the line art. Gonna come in with some other shades of brown to help sculpt all this out. One thing I like to do here is when I'm coloring straps, depending on the character, depending on how thick the strap is, leave a white line open to give a sense of the ridge of the strap. And if y'all just tuned in, welcome. For those that just joined us, I will be doing a Q&A here at the end of the broadcast, where I can put more of my focus on addressing as many questions as I can. Got a brown belt there, brown pouches, a lot of brown. So probably hit this with 2 or shades of brown to convey everything. Okay, so just a little bit more here. Then we're going to switch up browns. So I've been using the E55 right now. Let's use this for part of her sword as well. The hilt of her sword. Okay. So I'm going to switch over to the E3-4. It's a different vibrancy of brown, but I want those shades to kind of play together and give a fun sense of a variation of color. They're similar, but still a little bit different. So as they blend together, they kind of make a third color. So it's a little bit darker than the previous shade I was using. So I'm using it on most of the spots where it's a little bit further away from the light source, which, as we established, is pretty much coming from above. Okay, so next up, going a little bit lighter with the E3-1. The E3-1 now to blend a little further to that white. We don't want to leave as much white because maybe this shade of leather isn't as reflective as, say, her bodysuit. So we just want just a little bit of white showing left. Or a little bit of white left showing. So probably the proper order those words should be in to make that sentence. So this E3-1 just can kind of blend over everything, give it a nice kind of watercolor effect. It makes all those inks, all the different shades of brown I've put down, kind of all blend together. They all kind of all start to intermingle and smooth out in a nice kind of watercolor-like way. That's why I like blending with the lightest shade of whatever colors I'm using. Not much more here, and then we'll probably move on to the silver parts. Her backpack, her shark backpack, and then the silver parts of her uniform. And then we'll be heading into doing some more realistic shading or shadows. Okay, so I think that pretty much takes care of the browns. Actually, before we switch over to those things I'd mentioned, let's use a little bit of a darker shade of a brown for the handle of her sword. So I'm going to use some E25 here. So that's the E25. Let's come in with a little E57. A little bit darker. There we go. So, next up, let's color the blue of her backpack. So her little shark backpack is kind of a bluish gray. So right now I'm going to start with a little B97. So I'm just starting darker here initially, instead of mid-range, which I often do. I'm going to start a little bit with a darker shade, just a little bit of that B95, or I'm sorry, B97, that was B97. Now I'm using the B95, my apologies. Let's see, let's try some much lighter shade of blue. Let's go with the B12 now. Start blending those darker shades all together. There we go. So that takes care of her backpack. How many markers do I have and how much money do I think I've spent on them? I probably have, I'd say probably almost 200 Copic Sketch markers, and so I've probably spent several $100s on building this collection. I've lost count over the many years. So now for the silver, I'm going to start with some B000. I'm going to use this on the blade of the katana here, and on these buckles on her uniform here, as well as some of the buckles here on all the straps. Still leaving the white on the upper portion, which is closer to the light, adding color here towards the bottom part as part of the quote, end quote, shadow. Put a little bit of this here in the eye, just to kind of round it out a little bit. And I want to put a little bit of a darker shade of pink, some E85 here underneath back part of the G buckle. So now some neutral gray. We're going to use some neutral grays to go over this light blue to give it that kind of metallic look. I always like to use blues and grays together to intermingle. So I'm using some neutral 1. And just going over that blue with this neutral 1. You could also use a neutral 0 if you want. I just feel like the light blue with the neutral grays, or cool grays if you want. You can experiment. Gives kind of a nice reflective chrome or metallic sort of look. I want to go a little bit darker with the neutral gray. So a neutral 3 now, here for just underneath that hilt. Just right there. It's casting the hilt of the sword is casting a little bit of a shadow onto the blade there. Just as simple as that. Done. So let's see. Well, let's do something with that cell phone real quick. I'm going to use a series of maybe kind of this purplish color. We use several different shades of color here for this. So right now this is a BV25. As my darkest shade of color that I'll be utilizing on this cell phone. Let's pull that from that a BV34. So I'm just blending upwards towards the light source. so that the BV34 is mixing with that BV25. So those colors are intermingling and creating a nice gradation. And now for an even lighter shade of purple, a BV11. Using it to blend down into those other shades. Leaving a little tiny white there on the corner. Just a little highlight right there. Okay, that takes care of her cell phone. Just a simple cell phone case there. Now let's move into some more realistic shadows. I like to use some dark shades of the colors I've been using, as you saw me do with the pinks and shades of brown, for a sense of shadow, but then I like to come in with some cool grays to get those more realistic shadows. So I'm going to start with some cool gray 1 here on her skin tones. Just put some cool gray through the underneath the eyelids, maybe a little bit underneath her bangs. Her bangs are casting a shadow onto her face. Underneath her nose for sure. A little bit there on the lips. Underneath the chin. Right here at the little, where the cheeks pull from the smile. Just sculpting it out. This is where studying the planes of the face can come in real handy. If you know how the different angles of the eye socket to the bridge of the nose, to the cheek, to the chin, to the jawline, these aspects can really help. I'll use this cool gray 1 on these light shades of pink as well. It's just light enough to help convey the shadow that I want without overpowering the pink too much. So just like that, just dropping in these cool grays gives it a bit of a more of a realistic sort of shadowing. Oops, I forgot some spots of, I forgot some buckles over here. Let's go back to that B000 as I'd used before. And a little bit of that neutral gray 1. There we go. Just so it's uniform. It's all uniform. So back to the cool gray 1. So you can see here the difference of the pink that has the cool gray versus the pink that has not had the cool gray added to it yet. You can go either way. You can stop here and let that be it if that's your style. But me, I like to drop in these cool grays and really flesh it out even further. I think it gives the eye more to play with and looks really cool. So you can see the difference happening. You can see how much it changes when we start dropping in these cool grays. And still, this is cool gray 1, very light on the cool gray spectrum. I just kind of feather it in. I don't have to bear down too hard. I can always add more saturation of color if I want, if I feel it needs it. Just feathering from the joint down. Let's add some cool gray here to the thighs, right underneath where those pouches overlap, where the strap and this pouch overlaps, the muscle through the thigh here. A little bit here on her shorts. Down through the knee. Knees can be very challenging to draw. It takes a lot of study and practice. Over here on this side, the inner thigh. Really putting that gray right there because the knee is bent, so the light's hitting here, less light hitting here, so more shadow would be the result. Underneath that pouch there. Just see, just adding that little zap of gray there has now created a sense of dimension. Let's see. Need to color the little pistol there in her holster. So we're just going to come in and just drop in a little bit of neutral gray here. Neutral gray 4. It's pretty shadowed out, being tucked away in there, so we don't have to give it a lot. So that takes care of that pistol. Now let's go a little bit darker with the cool grays. Let's go cool gray 2 for some shadows in the hair. Don't need a lot of shadows in the hair, just a little bit. Especially up under here, because this part is tucked here underneath her ear. It's tucked away from the light, so it's going to have more shadow. It just helps create that volume and depth. So her face pops off it a little more. Maybe a little bit more cool gray over her eyelids. Maybe a little bit darker here underneath the tip of the nose, the nostril, I should say. Now let's switch it to the cool gray 3 for the pink parts of her costume. And maybe the blue parts as well. So I always try to pick a shade of gray that kind of matches the shade and tone of the color. I don't want to go too dark. I can always start off lighter, and I feel if it needs to be darker, it's easy to go darker, but you can't really go lighter in this stage. Because you can't really take away the color all that well. You could probably try with a colorless blender, but it's just easier to start lighter and then work our way darker when we're uncertain and we're experimenting. In fact, this cool gray 3 works well with this shade of brown, so I'm going to use it as well. We're just really creating that depth. Kind of creating a reflective little horizon line right there. Like her belt buckle is maybe metallic, so it's going to reflect the environment around her. Don't forget the Q&A coming up here soon after the art. I will flip the camera around and I'll address as many questions as possible. So do stay tuned for that. A little darker there in the armpit area. I'm going to power down to the cool gray 1 here. Just to blend a little further. I guess that is one way, like I felt it was a little too dark of a gray there, so I could use this lighter gray to kind of the lighter shade ink kind of blends it out. So that's a way to lighten up a little bit. If you feel you've maybe used a color that might have been a smidge too dark. I'm just doing a kind of a generalized blending, just kind of smoothing everything together. A little bit of a sense of a shadow of her mask overlapping her hair just a little bit. Put a little of this cool gray one amidst that blue. A little bit here in the teeth. A little bit more there on the lips. Okay. I think we're just about on the tail end here of this illustration. Pretty much got all the colors hit, all the areas. Have either been colored or shadowed. Shaded might be the more proper term. Colored or shaded. Now I want to add a little bit of a background element. So I'm going to use my circle template here. Some people might call this, it's not really a compass. It's not really a template as, what's the term for this? My big circle maker. Circletron. And as it's transparent, you can see the artwork underneath. I'm trying to find where the line will go around. Compass, yeah, compass was the first word I used. I thought compass is more the thing where you have a little pin and you can stretch it out and it has the pencil. Protractor, is it a protractor? Maybe this is, yeah. Yeah, compass, protractor, these are tools that one would use in geometry class. So I'm looking to see where the circle line would go so I don't have any tangent. So the line doesn't hit in a certain part of Gwenpool's body or equipment in a way that creates an unappealing line. So I'm gonna rough this in with pencil so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here, and then we'll fill it in with color. So I'm very mindful of even the shape of the circle here behind Gwenpool. So you can see by the pencil line, it gets really dicey here because this is her arm creates a similar shape, so I want it to cut just a little wider. I wouldn't want it to follow that line right there. That would be a tangent. If the circle line followed this part of her arm around, that would be an unappealing design to the eye. I'm keeping in mind like her cell phone. It cuts right behind this chunk of cell phone, right behind that chunk of arm. I wouldn't want the line to go right to the corner of the cell phone or right to the corner of her elbow of the arm. You don't want the lines to line up like that. So I'm mindful of how they're coming around, and this feels like the placement I've given it allows for the least number of tangents. So now to fill this in with a color, I think what might be nice is a dark color because she's got a lot of light colors going on here with the blonde, the pink, the white. So I'm probably just going to do just straight up black. I think black is going to be just a really nice vibrant color, or vibrant color. It's a lack of color. I think the black will just really make her pop. So I'm going to put my compass, protractor, circle maker thingy back on here. And I'm going to ink in the circle, just to kind of get an initial outline. Now I'm not letting the line touch any part of her or her equipment, because what I'm doing here is I'm going to create a halo. There'll still be a white halo around her, just because I think it'll look cool. So I don't want the black line to touch any part of her inks, of her figure or her equipment or costume in any way. So there we go. So I'm going to beef up this line here a bit with my zebra brush pen here. I'm going to establish my halo around Gwen here. So just going all the way around the perimeter of Gwen, but leaving a white space between the black and her line art. And I'll fill that spot in black in a moment here. So right now I'm just doing a nice thick line. And if the area is small enough, like right here, go ahead and just fill it all in here with the zebra brush pen. This is the zebra, or the medium tipped zebra brush pen. Trying to keep the halo about the same width all the way around. I'll come in with my Pentel pocket brush pen here in a moment, which is a wider brush than this zebra brush pen, and that will allow me to fill in the black places a lot easier, a lot more timely than trying to fill it in here with this zebra brush pen. It could be done, but it would just kill my zebra brush pen to fill in this amount of space. So no need to do that if I have a tool I can use that'll get it done in a more efficient manner. Is the zebra brush pen like the Pentel pocket brush pen? No, it's not. The zebra brush pen tip is not quite as brushy as a Pentel pocket brush pen. It's kind of more of like halfway between a brush and a marker. As you can see by the tip here, it's not refillable like a Pentel pocket brush pen. So it's kind of a nice middle zone between a multi-liner and a full-on brush, like a bristly brush type pen. And I get these zebra brush pens at Daiso, D-A-I-S-O, Daiso Japan stores. They have them here in Southern California. I know they have some, I think, in the Midwest. I don't know if they have them out east yet. But Daiso Japan stores, everything in there is $1.50. So I can get these pens for $1.50. I see them for sale online for like $3 to $5. And it's like, if I can get these for $1.50, why would I want to go anywhere else? So when I go to Daiso Japan stores, I buy these by the handful. But I think a lot of people know that secret, so they go in and buy them. So sometimes I'll go in and there are just no zebra brush pens. They have such a hard time keeping these in stock because, they're such a, they're a cool pen for a great price if you can get them for $1.50. So it's easy for them to sell out. That's why when I go in and I find any, I make sure I stock up. They come in medium, fine, and bold nibs. And I like the medium is gray, is a gray barrel, as you can see. The really fine tip is a blue barreled pen. All the ink is black. And then the black barreled pen is the wide or bold nib. So usually I buy the fine and the medium because I use those more. Sometimes I'll pick up a bold once or twice. So once I finish the background here, gang, we will be doing the Q&A. So do stick around for that. Appreciate y'all all hanging out with me here on this Saturday afternoon here on Easter weekend. Hope y'all have a happy Easter. As I, finish off this Gwenpool piece, which has been a lot of fun to do, and I'll be doing more live streams, so make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on live streams. Make sure you tap that bell so you can set your notifications so you're alerted anytime I schedule or start a live stream or even post a video. Right now, due to my work schedule, live streams are a bit easier than shooting and editing videos, so I'll probably be doing more live streams. Seems like y'all tend to enjoy seeing my art being created in real time. So I think the live streams will be continuing to fit that bill as I share with you my tips and tricks as I work, my thought process. All right, so now I'm switching to the Pentel Pocket Brush Pen, and we're going to fill in these spots a lot quicker now. Boom. I think this black background will really serve well to make Gwenpool really pop. So as you can see, the Pentel Pocket Brush Pen has a more bristly, true brush sort of tip, which is significantly different than the Zebra brush pen I was just using prior. Just a couple more spots to tackle here, gang. I guess we have 3, so not quite a couple. All right, now we're down to a couple. We got 2 spots. All right, let's hit this last area here. Zebra brush pen, PETA's gonna get mad. Oh, don't worry, PETA, they're not made from zebras. At least I don't think they are. Just like an Apple computer is not made with apples. Don't know why they call them zebra. Maybe they just like the word. But hopefully no zebras are harmed in the making a zebra brush pen. I'd hate to have to stop buying them. And there we go. So let me add my date. I already signed the piece from the first live stream, but we finished it today. So I'll put the date, which is the 20th of April, 2019. And there we go. There's Gwenpool. Let's pull the camera back so you can see a full shot of Gwenpool. This is my scratch paper. I test out all the markers before I commit to coloring them. So you might have heard me doing that before. So there's Gwenpool. Now I'll flip the camera around and we'll do the live Q&A. Oh, get my hand out of the way there. All right, gang. Oh. Let me readjust the rig here. Feel free to post your question. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. Unfortunately, I can't promise I can answer everyone's question, but I'll try to tackle as many as possible. Sorry for the jostle here, gang. There we go. Is that good? Is that good? There. Awesome. All right. You liked and shared my video. Thanks so much for liking my videos. Thanks so much for sharing my videos. I really appreciate that support. It helps me continue to make these videos and do these live streams, getting it out there to more people. So thank you so much. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. Let's answer some questions here. Is there an artist that really influenced my style? Yeah, there are a lot of artists that either inspired me or influenced me to one degree or another. And I've been reading comics since I was a kid, and especially in the 1980s. So probably my biggest influence was Arthur Adams. Still is a great inspiration to me, and now he's a friend of mine because we work in the industry, and I see him all the time at the convention. So big fan of Arthur's work since I was like 15 years old. Definitely a big influence on me, and I know a lot of other artists. Other artists that were pretty influential, highly influential, would be Rick Leonardi, Walter Simonson, Alan Davis, Mike Zeck, Mark Silvestri, Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane, Eric Larson, Humberto Ramos, J. Scott Campbell to agree, Mike Ruingo, oh my gosh, the legendary Mike Ruingo. So these are just some of the artists that have influenced me from the kind of the mid 80s to the mid 90s, and then so many other artists I find incredibly inspirational beyond that. Mahmoud Asrar, Sarah Pikeli, Marguerite Sauvage, Otto Schmidt, Ryan Otley, just so many, just through the decades, Chris Pacello, just so many artists. I could just continue just to list name after name after name. And then other classic artists, John Byrne, Paul Smith, John Romita Jr., just, let's see, Amanda Connor more recently. So it's just tons of artists that have influenced me. So we're going to tackle some more questions here. Can I show off some of more of the original art I have in my collection in future videos? Maybe so. Would I consider doing a live stream, but in digital format, like a digital drawing, like drawing on my tablet? Yes, I would consider doing that. I'll probably do a test run and see how that works. And then, yeah, so hopefully I'll be able to do some digital live streams here in the very near future. Would be ideal. How's the progress coming on Sketchbook Blue? Sketchbook Blue is printed, and I've been selling it at cons so far. I think I have a copy here that I can show you. Sketchbook Blue does exist now. This will be available for sale online, hopefully here as soon as May. So hopefully if you got Sketchbooks Red, Sketchbooks Black, Sketchbook Blue, we'll give you a sneak peek at some of the first few pages here. We got Wolverine and the Bamfs, Robin and Robin and Spider-Man. Brain just totally clicked there. Some of my favorite X-Men, Rogue, Colossus. So it's a lot of these style pieces available in tasty book form. Tasty? Please don't eat these books. I would not recommend eating any of my sketchbooks. But tasty for the eyes, hopefully. So if you enjoy my work, hopefully you'll enjoy my sketchbooks. So I will have this bundled with sketchbooks volume 1 and 2, which is volume 1 is red, volume 2 is black, with here volume 3 blue as a discounted bundle. So if you're interested in getting all 3 books, if you haven't picked up any yet, wait until here hopefully in May. And these will hopefully be available for sale online at my store, and you can purchase them and have them shipped to you, and you can get them all in one convenient bundle. Let's see some other questions here. You saw me in person, but too scared to get an autograph. Oh, I'm so sorry. Please, if you see me in person, feel free to ask for an autograph. I'm more than happy to do that. Next time, don't be scared. Come visit me, especially if you're at a convention. Come to my Artist Alley table. How many live drawing classes did you take or have? I went to the Art Institute of Dallas. And I had like 5 or 6 quarters, which were 11-week quarters classes during the 2-year program that I had life drawing. So I had a lot of life drawing classes. I don't really attend many life drawing classes nowadays, mainly just because I don't have time. But it is always good to draw from real life and to do life drawing whenever possible, because it really helps our skills, even if we have a more fanciful art style. Let's see. Any tips on dynamic poses? I will be doing videos on that. A lot of it comes with learning foreshortening, because it's easy to draw just a character just standing up straight. But once we start to bend the character, move them around, that's where the dynamics comes in. And the more we push those angles, kind of like what I did here with Gwenpool. You know, her head overlaps her neck, which is overlapping her shoulders. Her body is cutting back this way. Her chest is this way. Her pelvis facing that way. The legs coming forward, going back. The arm foreshortening here allows for that dynamic vibe. So really pushing the angles can really help. Do you do commissions? You'd love a spawn drawing. My studio commission list is closed due to overwhelming demand. I have had poor people waiting for years for me to get to their name on my list. So I had to completely close that list because it was getting far too long. Once I'm able to complete all those people who had gotten on my list, my studio commission list, I'm not referring to my comic con convention commissions. Those are something completely different. But my studio list is yeah, it's completely closed. Once I get all those taken care of, I will reopen my list in announcements on my social media and my website. So, but that will still be unfortunately a long ways away, because I've got a lot that I have to take care of amidst my work and convention travel. Now, if you happen to be at a convention I'm at, that's a quicker way to get a commission. You know, you can't get something super detailed, but you can still get something pretty cool. And they're you know, a little less expensive. So if I'm coming to a town in your area, make sure you read up on that on toddnauck.com. And while I'm here, I might as well announce my May conventions, Comic-Con Revolution in Ontario, California, and Phoenix Fan Fusion in Phoenix, Arizona. And I forget those exact dates, but they're around the middle of May. You can find the posting about this announcement on toddnauck.com. Was it hard combining my style to the Teen Titans cartoon comic book I did, which was the original Teen Titans Go, before they made this current Teen Titans Go? It was a bit of a challenge, kind of learning that Glenn Murakami style, but it was fun. It was fun to kind of challenge my brain to think in these ways of the more simple animated shapes. And I really enjoyed doing that series. It was a really fun series to do. And a lot of those comics are now being recollected in all new trade paperbacks. When did I realize I was good at drawing? I'll let you know. I'll let you know when that happens. I'll let you know when the day that realization comes to pass. I more focused on just my pure love and joy of drawing, my passion for drawing, and continued practice and study to try to level up as much as possible. Let's see. How much time to master my art supplies? Every supply is different, but it's like, look, with Copics here, I've been working with these since 2009 is when I first started buying Copic sketch markers. And it's just been a continual evolution to discover how to utilize these markers and what I could get from them, what they are capable of doing. And a lot of that came through trial and error. So if you see some of my earlier Copic marker illustrations, you know, they don't look like this, because I hadn't learned how to blend them or what I could do with the sketch brush tip as much as I have learned now. So every art supply is different. The Pentel pocket brush pen, the zebra brush pen, some are a little more easier than others, just all depending on where my skills are at and what that art material or what that art supply can do. See, scroll back here, see if I missed any questions. I'm sorry I can't answer everyone's question. I will try to answer as many as possible. Let's see, someone's asking about the X-Men group shot, which I still have. I have not sold it yet. It's right here. Do y'all remember this? The 20+ part series drawing the 90s era X-Men. I have not sold it. I've had several people inquire about it. I may have to put it up on eBay and let people fight for it, just duke it out. I might set it for a reserve price to get what I feel I would want for it, but if anyone wants to duke it out, they are more than welcome to. Who was the first character you drew? If you mean professionally, my first paid published work was for Marvel, and it was for their humor comic book called What The? And it was an X-Men gag. So technically, my first paid professional published work was the X-Men. And as a big X-Men fan, dude, what a way to start my career. So I was 21 years old, and I was still in art school, and an editor liked my work enough to say, she said, you know what, I'll buy an X-Men gag off of you for the What The comic book series. Because my style was pretty cartoony still then, like really cartoony, more like Mad Magazine kind of cartoony. It'd still be like another year and a half or so before my work got a little more traditional superhero style, to where I got hired by Rob Liefeld back in the early Image Comics days. Let's see. Do I ever use other mediums besides Copic and ink when drawing comic art? I don't use Copics for comic book art. When I'm doing my comic book art, Those are colored by digital colorists. My friend Rochelle Rosenberg is my go-to colorist. I work with her a lot. So I'm just doing the line work, just black and white line work, and then that's passed on to the colorist to let her do her job while I'm getting a jump on the next pages so we can keep the book coming out every month. But when I do these commission style pieces, these are done with, I either use the Copic markers or sometimes watercolor. And you can find a whole bunch of my watercolor videos here on YouTube. In fact, I have a whole dedicated watercolor playlist. So check out my playlist and you can see my approach to watercolor. Hopefully I'll have some more watercolor videos coming out in the near future. Have I ever thought of doing a style challenge? No, I haven't. I haven't thought of doing that yet. Do I work in colored pencils? I don't. I appreciate colored pencils, and it would be fun to try doing an illustration in colored pencils. Artist Clayton Henry does beautiful colored pencil stuff. If you haven't seen his work, check him out on Instagram. I follow him on Instagram, and he's just got, oh my gosh, there's so much to learn from how he approaches his colored pencils. It is just gorgeous work. You will not be disappointed. So yeah, seeing that inspires me to like, ooh, I want to try it. What could I do with colored pencils? How would colored pencils work with my style? So I have been intrigued by that. Just haven't pulled the trigger yet, just because I've been so busy with all the conventions this past spring, with my work deadlines. In fact, might as well plug some of the comic books I'm working on. Cosmic Ghost Rider Destroys Marvel History. Hopefully you caught my issue 2 of that series. It's not the regular Cosmic Ghost Rider series. It's a spin-off miniseries called Cosmic Ghost Rider Destroys Marvel History. And issue 2 just came out. It's a Spider-Man issue written by Paul Scheer and Nick Giovannetti. It's really cool, really fun, really some really funny stuff. It was really great to work with them again. I did an issue of Spider-Man Deadpool with them a couple of years ago, issue 12, the holiday issue. So it's really great to be teamed up with these guys again. Really fun writers. How many Copics do I have? I probably have almost 200 Copics. How many comic pages can I draw in a day? Pretty much since I do my own pencils and inks now, I've been inking my work since 2010. I average 1 full page per day for the most part. Though I work in stages, I pretty much get 1 completed page done per day. So that allows me to do 1 20-page comic book per month. Let's see. You've been working on your sequential art. Good to know. Good for you. Keep learning that language. But you're having trouble coming up with scenes. Yeah, if you have do I have any suggestions on how to overcome that? Yeah, if you can't get your hand on a writer's script, which, those can be hard to come by, what you can do is a trick that I learned back long ago and actually really helped me out a lot, was take a comic book. Take any comic book, if you're a fan of a certain character, that's great. Don't get if you say you like Spider-Man, and say you're a big Todd McFarlane Spider-Man fan. Do not grab a Todd McFarlane Spider-Man comic. Get someone that grab an issue by an artist that you might not be as familiar with, or you might not be a really big fan of, because you don't want to be influenced by the person that you admire so much. So just grab a random Spider-Man comic, pick out 3 to 5 consecutive pages, like in order. Then jot down what's happening on those pages. You don't have to do the exact number of panels, just like, let's see, it's New York City, Spider-Man swings by, his spider sense goes off, he looks down at the street, he sees the Rhino smashing through a bank building on the next page. Now, let's see, there are cops trying to stop Rhino, and he flips over a cop car, Spider-Man swings down and shoots a web line to trip, to trip the Rhino, and you just keep writing this stuff down. Write down what you're seeing, just panel after panel. Don't say how many panels there are, because what you're going to do is now take all this information and now reframe it all, redraw it all your way. Put the comic away, put it far away, never refer to it again. Don't ever refer to it again while you're drawing this scene. Now take this and draw, in fact, maybe wait till the next day so that your brain has had a chance to refresh. Go watch an episode of Doctor Who, and now sit down and take this written information and draw it your way. Come up with different camera angles, different panels sizes, number of panels, more panels, less panels per page. Now you have the material to retranslate this story your way. And that's the key thing, is to do it your way and not be influenced by the artist you've jotted down all this information. You do not have to draw in the word balloons. Do not draw in the word balloons, gang. When you're doing your sequential samples, don't draw in the word balloons. Don't write in the text. I see this happen at conventions. It doesn't work. It detracts. And the editor doesn't need to see that because they have letterers who they hire to put in the word balloons. They just want to see pure art. Just show the art, the figures, the backgrounds, the camera angles, the lighting, the rendering. Just show that. The editor will figure out where the word balloons are supposed to go. But don't draw in the word balloons unless you want to be a letterer. If you want to do that. But nowadays, lettering is done digitally on most all the comics that I know, so that you, because it's easier to make corrections. You know, if you misspell a word, you don't have to go in with whiteout. You just go into the computer, tippy-typey, boom, readjust. It's done in minimal effort, and so they can keep material coming out on a regular basis. So, gang, you don't have to draw on the word balloons. I know a lot of young artists do it. You don't have to do that. It's better if you don't. Let's see. You love that. Thanks for the advice. You're welcome. Any advice on camera angles? Yes. I would say watch movies. Watch movies and pause every now and again and study the camera angle, because those of us drawing comics, in a sense, we're directing a movie, but we're not limited to a movie screen frame. We can do, thin vertical panels. We can do, really all sorts of different shaped or sized panels. So we're not limited, but it's still capturing a moment. So when you pause a movie, study it. Where did the director have the characters? How is the depth? What is the camera angle? And just do that. Just pause every now and again. Maybe take a screen cap for your, for reference, or sketch it out. Kind of sketch out what you see, and from here you can practice and kind of catalog in your brain ways to move the camera around and come up with other camera angles. So, gang, thanks so much. I need to sign off. I really appreciate everyone hanging out. Thanks for joining me for this 3-part Gwenpool illustration. I look forward to, coming up with something next for the next live streams. You can see this on my social media, so make sure you follow me on my social media. I'll be posting all of that here in the video description here in a moment. But you can find me as @Todd Nauck on Instagram and Twitter. And you can see this and a bunch of other art, especially on the Instagrams. So I hope y'all have a great day. I hope y'all have a great Easter weekend. And I look forward to seeing you again really